So our presentation here at 1:30 Eastern Time is with Ed Boks, who's the Executive Director of the Bayou Animal Services. He is going to be sharing information with the City of Dickinson Community CAP program. Ed convinced the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors to embrace TNR as the official county response to feral cat complaints in 24 cities and towns. Boks has been an advocate of TNR in Maricopa and Yavapai counties in Arizona, New York City, and the city of Los Angeles, who he partnered with FixNation at that time, Spokane, and now he is in the Gulf Coast of Texas. So it's safe to say that Ed has pretty much been all around the United States promoting community CAP programs. And so I'm really thrilled to have him here today to talk about the work that he is doing in Texas.
I have been looking forward to this presentation with some intrepidation, because I was thinking, what in the world could I share with you folks that you don't already know? I feel like I'd be preaching to the choir, but I think my approach is the audience that I typically work with, and that is trying to convince municipal leaders to embrace TNR as a methodology for addressing feral cat issues in their communities. So with that in mind, what I have come to discover over the years is that there are three basic ways that municipalities respond to feral cat problems. One is to do nothing, to ignore the problem. I think we all understand how and why that is not efficacious. Number two is catch and remove, which is a bit of a euphemism for catch and kill, typically in most communities. And there are unintended consequences when employing catch and remove or catch and kill. And that is a biological imperative that feral cats share, interestingly enough, with coyotes. One of the reasons we have coyotes all across the United States is because of catch and kill methodologies. And if we try to practice those same methodologies with feral cats, we're going to see their overbreeding and overproducing, the vacuum effect as well. And what's interesting is that when a feral cat colony is under stress, a biological imperative kicks in, and the females that survive the catch and kill efforts will overbreed and overproduce. So instead of having one litter of 3 or 4 kittens, she will have 3 or 4 litters of 4 to 9 kittens. And then, of course, the vacuum effect also goes into play, where cats will fill the vacuum that is created. So you never get ahead of the problem. As hard as you try to remove the cats, it will only get worse. So the only viable and at the same time humane methodology that I share with municipalities that will work in solving their concerns with feral cats is trap, neuter, and return. And by return, I mean ideally to the care of a colony manager or caretaker. So when making the case for TNR to city and county officials, you want to let them know that TNR is the only methodology that will reduce the free-roaming cat population, which concerns them. And the way that that happens, as you know, is that when you trap an adoptable cat, you remove it from the population and try to rehome it, or home it, adopt it out. And then, of course, attrition will outpace the feral births over time. And so you will literally solve the problem of feral cats in a community through attrition. And then there's cost savings that municipalities will realize when employing TNR, as opposed to the other methodologies of either doing nothing or trap and kill. And that is because TNR, by and large, is staffed by volunteers, people who want to assist the municipality in solving the problem. And that, of course, when you reduce the number of feral cats, you directly reduce the animal care and control costs related to that problem. So continuing to make the case to county officials, you will, as you reduce the number of feral cats in a community, you reduce the nuisance behavior that they get complaints on, whether it's the caterwauling that occurs at night, the cat fighting, the spraying, marking up of property. All of these nuisance behaviors are mitigated and eventually eliminated through TNR. There's no vacuum effect, so you get off the hamster wheel of continually finding an exploding population the more you try to remove the cats. You reduce wildlife predation, which is a huge concern. That was a huge concern in the city of Los Angeles when I was there. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Enhanced public health. It reduces the incidence of rabies through the wildlife-cat connection. Fewer cats, fewer connections with wildlife, and fewer incidents of rabies. Reduce incidence of zoonotic diseases overall, as well as reduce rodent population. And many communities have embraced the rat abatement, or the TNR, surely for the rat abatement aspect of it. When I was in Los Angeles, the flower district had a huge problem with rodents and rats, and literally running across the shoes of customers in that. It just was horrible for business. And we introduced TNR and feral cats into the flower district, which resolved that problem. And that was a problem if you did a nexus search in the newspapers. That was a problem in the flower district going back 50, 60, 70 years. And today that problem is largely solved. So making the case for TNR, whatever community you're in, there are other communities who have already attempted it and have a success story. And these are some of the cities, towns, counties across the United States that I'm familiar with. And I just want to point out down at the bottom, there is a link that will take you to my website, which is full of white papers and all kinds of information and documentation. Uh-oh, did I lose my connection?
I think can you pull your slides back up again? Or did the...
There, am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay, good. So if you go to that link, I won't do that anymore, but you can do that, and there's a lot of information, a lot of studies, a lot of white papers, a lot of blog entries in that talking about the success of TNR in various communities. So these are just some of them, not the least of which is Dickinson, Texas, which recently, on August 9th of this year, we adopted a program in the city of Dickinson to control the feral cat population. And what's really interesting, having served in so many municipalities, this was the first community where I was actually recruited to implement a community cat program. This was something the municipality actually wanted, as opposed to New York and Los Angeles, who, well, New York didn't care for it. The city of Los Angeles did, but it was resisted by the Audubon Society. And I was mentioned earlier that TNR is an effective way of reducing wildlife predation. And in the city of Los Angeles, the Audubon Society fought tooth and nail the implementation of TNR because they thought it was bad for the bird population, the songbird population, which is very difficult to understand that reasoning. If you're going to reduce the number of feral cats, that would do nothing but help the songbird population. But there was nothing we could do to convince the Audubon chapter in Los Angeles, whereas in New York, they loved the program and embraced it, as has the Audubon Society and other communities. So our program, as I said, was adopted to control community cat populations and address the associated health and safety hazards and other impacts of the city. The program is known as the Dickinson Community Cat Program, and it's implemented in partnership with permitted community cat program individuals and organizations. And as I said earlier, oftentimes the cost to animal control or to municipality can be greatly reduced by partnering with willing volunteers who are oftentimes expert, much more so than the animal control departments themselves in addressing the feral cat issues in a community. And then the program is managed by what our ordinance calls the regulatory authority, but that is the Bayou Animal Services in the City of Dickinson. So the three organizations who stepped up to partner with us in drafting the ordinance initially and are now our partners in providing the trapping and even the spay-neuter of our feral cats is the Gulf Coast Tiny Paws, Lifeline of Galveston County, and Fix Your Pets of Galveston County. Three truly remarkable and wonderful organizations without whom we would not have been able to implement this program. Part of implementing this program was redefining our relationship with feral cats as a municipality. Our ordinance had no definitions with respect to feral cats other than to define what a cat is, which stayed the same. But then we added other definitions to it to assist and to help. Community cat, and we had a lot of, did we want to call these cats feral cats? Do we want to call them community cats? Understanding the spectrum of behavior of community cats, from being very, very friendly to being very, very feral. What cats were we wanting our community cat program to assist? So we ultimately decided on the community cat means any free-roaming cat without visibly discernible evidence of ownership or microchip identification that may be cared for by one or more residents in the area, known or unknown. Community cats that are ear-tipped indicate an unowned cat that is sterilized and vaccinated against rabies at least one time. So that's the definition that we're getting out to our community, so that when they see a cat with an ear tip, they're less likely to call us to come out and do something. So again, the number of complaints that we receive at City Hall regarding feral cats is greatly diminished. Community cat caretaker is the person who provides care to a community cat, such as food, water, shelter, and veterinary care, while not being considered the owner, custodian, harborer, possessor, or keeper of a community cat under this ordinance. So this person cannot be cited for an animal at large or for any of the various animal control citations, because they're not the owner, they're a caretaker. Community cat colony, it means any group of cats and the geographic location where that group live or where they forage or hunt for food or are fed and generally cared for by an individual. We actually have an electronic map here at the City of Dickinson where we are tracking all of our colonies, and we're going to be measuring the data through a census process of, what is the population of each colony and what is the success of this program over time. The community cat program is the program in which community cats are sterilized, vaccinated against rabies, ear-tipped, and returned to the location where they were found. Again, these are all definitions that are in the ordinance that was recently enacted in August by the City Council. The community cat program partner means organizations or individuals authorized by Bayou Animal Services to monitor, manage, and assist in the implementation of the program. Community cat program regulations and guidelines we actually have a book of rules adopted by the City Council allowing these permitted organizations and future individuals who are permitted to undertake community care program activities, which rules include standards of care and guidelines for implementation activities. So the beauty of having program regulations and guidelines is that they can be enhanced and edited and modified and improved upon without having to go back to the ordinance and changing the ordinance. The ordinance simply refers to the program regulations and guidelines and requires the community care program partners and permittees to abide by the rules and the regulations. And if they need to be enhanced, they can be enhanced without changing the ordinance. And so all of our permittees read the guidelines, agree to them, sign off on them, and before they can get a permit. Ear tips and ear tipping is designed to identify the community cat. This procedure is performed under sterile conditions. I think we all understand that. SNR is something that we added for those rare occasions. We should not be seeing any feral cats coming into the shelter now that this program has been implemented, but should a feral cat find its way in for whatever reason, if it was injured and we were able to care for it and treat it back to health, we have a SNR program, Trap-Neuter-Return, means the non-lethal process of humanely impounding, sterilizing, vaccinating, ear tipping, and returning community cats to their original location, which we actually have done on a couple of occasions since implementing this new program. And then TNR, of course, is working with our partners to trap, neuter, and return. And then basically this is it. This is the permit. The regulations and guidelines are designed to be easy. It was interesting to watch the process of putting together the regulations and the guidelines as well as the ordinance. And I'll admit, it started out as being pretty onerous. And because we were working with TNR experts, we were able to really hone them down to make them as easy and as palatable as possible for the folks in the community who want to help with TNR. So they are designed to be easy. They're designed to protect the trapper and the caretaker's anonymity, which was really important to our partners. Something I guess I understood. I was hoping that there was a level of trust where we could, we would all know who we were and we could work and play well together. But apparently, because of history, not perhaps specifically here in Dickinson, but experiences across the country and stories of different kinds of situations with trappers, and that there was a concern of getting too close to a government agency. So this program, while we have permittees who manage the program out in the field, we don't know who the trappers are specifically. The permittees do, but we don't. The ordinance requires compliance with the regulations and guidelines, which is the pamphlet that I referred to. It's a 5 or 6 page pamphlet of just standards of care, methodologies for trapping, notification requirements, that sort of thing. The regulations and guidelines allows, as I mentioned, Bayou Animal Services to approve the program without having to go back and changing the ordinance. Changing ordinances in municipalities can take weeks to months, and it can be very, very challenging and difficult, where now all we have to do is, if we find a way that we can improve the program and be more supportive of our partners, we can do that without having to change the ordinance. And what's interesting over time, although this is current, ordinance prohibits cats that are not part of a community cat program from free roaming. So up until the implementation of this program, there was no ordinance against which we could cite a cat owner for letting their cats run at large. But now we can. I'm not sure that we're going to do that. Our hopes are that people will keep their cats indoors, or if they're going to have indoor-outdoor cats, they're not going to be problematic in the community. But if they should become problematic in the community, animal control now has a way where cat owners can be cited for letting their cats run free. And that concludes my presentation. Is there any questions?
Question from Rachel. General liability insurance required if feeding on public property. Can you address what this means and how caretakers could pay for this or approach this?
Well, that would be up to the permittee. If they're going to do trapping on public property, they are required to get the liability insurance. And that is their responsibility, and then they have to prove that as part of getting the permit. So the onus is really on the permittee, not on animal control.
So, for example, what you said on public property, so behind the library, right? Public property, yeah. So then my TNR group is going to TNR the cats behind that library. I have to get a certificate of insurance for the public library address from my organization to be able to do TNR there. Is that what that's saying?
Correct. And you have to name the city as indemnified or a part of that insurance policy. And that's just in the event that one of your volunteers gets injured on the property, or a cat escapes in, bites somebody who's just trying to get away, or some sort of unfortunate and unlikely probably thing occurs. It's just something the city requires to permit this kind of activity on public grounds, such as parks where you have children playing and that sort of thing.
Yep. So I've had to get that certificate for fundraising events or outreach events. Whenever my Catmobile parked in a public parking lot, oftentimes the landlord of the shopping mall would ask us to get that kind of certificate also. So
right.
It's not something that impacts your overall insurance. It's something that is just, it's sort of part of that general business insurance package.
Exactly.
So just to share with folks, it's not going to be a huge.
Right. When I say it puts the onus on the permittee, it's an onus, but it's not onerous. It's not a difficult thing to obtain.
No, assuming.
And it's very inexpensive typically.
Well, assuming you have general business insurance.
Right.
As a nonprofit organization, there's various different kinds of insurance that you should have. And if you are there, I certainly do know some small TNR groups that operate on $20,000 or $30,000 a year that probably are not getting general insurance. But it sounds like the partners that you've talked with were in agreement to this, so they must be getting insurance. So
right. They're large, and they do. They are basic. They're 501c3s, but they're large enough, and it's the cost of doing business.
Right, and there's a nonprofit insurance alliance, I believe, which a lot of organizations get their nonprofit and insurance from. I'm not promoting them in any way, shape, or form. It's just I can remember their name pretty easily. You can check with your local insurance company too. Just to give us some sense of scale with regards to Dickinson, Texas. What population are we talking about for the size?
Small town USA, about 25,000 people.
Oh, okay. You're going to blow through this town in 6 months. You'll be
right.
done. You'll be done. This is nothing. You go from
what's interesting is in the last 2 months, the number of animals that we have impounded just within the city limits has skyrocketed 85%. This is not feral cats. This is just lost and homeless dogs and cats. So we're trying to figure out what in the world is going on that we would see that kind of a spike in lost and homeless animals.
Yeah, I mean, it's not shocking to me that you would have an increase of intakes in cats if your outreach efforts are going up, because usually when in my experience, when I've started a community cat program, there's usually an uptick the first year or so, and then a dramatic downfall. I don't know if you've seen that with increased outreach in the community.
Yeah, have not seen a significant increase in the number of cats we've been taking in. A little bit, but it's dogs and cats combined that make up that 85%.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So this is, I'm just looking here, question along, okay, so you're like the Mr. Municipal Specialist here. So I'm gonna sort of try and keep a lot of my questions focused on the municipalities. You said Dickinson invited you in to create a community cat program, and you have good experience working with municipalities. How long in general do you say, I mean, and I know we're talking scale here, we get smaller communities and larger communities. How long is the time frame for the process when you've had to go into a municipality and convince them that a TNR program is the right way to go? Does it take a year, years, months? And who do you go to first? I mean, do you go to animal control? Do you go to Board of Health? Do you just go to the mayor? I mean, who's the first person you reach out to?
Well, my first success was in Maricopa County, and I reported to public health. And the chief medical officer, who actually became my mentor over the years, was very supportive. He really didn't understand the animal control arena. He certainly didn't understand feral cats. But once I explained to him basically what I explained through this presentation, he was completely on board. And then he and I went to the County Board of Supervisors, and they enacted a resolution making TNR the only acceptable methodology in Maricopa County. And Maricopa County makes up 24 cities and towns. And TNR was embraced by Maricopa County and then all of the communities as the only viable way of dealing with feral cats. And that was probably 20 years ago. So to answer your question, how long did that take? Oftentimes when I come into a community, it's as a turnaround manager. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of things to address, feral cats being just one of many, many issues. So it kind of depends on where that has percolated, up to, what kind of complaints are the Board of Supervisors getting, what kind of complaints is the Board of Health getting, or the Sheriff's Office getting, or Animal Control. If feral cats are a real issue, then you have a solution and you start to approach it much more quickly. And some municipalities are much more open. The City of Los Angeles was very, very open until they got slapped with a lawsuit from the Audubon Society, which just shut them down. And that shut them down for close to a decade. I mean, it just paralyzed them. It didn't stop TNR, FixNation and other wonderful organizations in LA continued, but the city could not participate. And up until then, I was participating with all of those groups in a pretty significant way, but then we just had to stop. And then, so it sort of depends. Smaller communities, Yavapai County, Spokane, Washington, embraced TNR very easily. It's just kind of a no-brainer. The City of New York, again, once you have a bureaucracy, I reported to public health there as well, and it was just the antithesis of Maricopa County. Maricopa County Public Health completely understood it and got it very quickly. Public health in New York City never did quite understand it. So it kind of depends. Now, the municipality here in Dickinson, like I said, that was one of the first questions is what was my stance on TNR. And that was one of the things that they were looking for in an executive director, is someone who would implement a program like this.
Yeah, and I mean, there are lots of different ways of accomplishing TNR in different communities. And, you know, this is, you know, a very supervised model, I guess I would say, versus more of a, you know, return to field. We don't know who's connected to this cat and that kind of thing. So there are different scenarios for different communities. How, if say I'm an individual, I have 2 cats in my backyard, community cats in my backyard, I want to TNR them, do it all on my own, do it what I call the neighborhood cats way, which is, you know, sort of just individuals learning how to do it. Yesterday we had 77% of the people attending our TNR workshop were just out there trapping cats in their backyards on their own, not affiliated with an organization. You know, is there a place for them in this model, or because Dickinson is such a small community, it's a more controlled model?
Yeah, if they're doing TNR on their own property, they do not need a permit. They can do it, and we will put them in touch with our partners who will help them if needed. But if you're going to practice TNR on someone else's property or on public property, then you need a permit.
Excellent. Okay, got that. Excellent. Well, another question we had about talking about getting the adoptables, trapping the adoptables and bringing them in. Can you clarify what you determine as being sort of the target cats for adoptables? There's, I think, a lot of confusion with regards to return to field as to, you know, who ends up coming into the shelter and being adopted versus who ends up getting returned.
Right. Well, I am fortunate. I have a staff who take a lot of pride in rehabilitating dogs and cats. The very basic test that I refer to as, you know, the pencil test is if you put a pencil in a trap and the cat moves away, it's a feral. And if it comes up to it, it's probably more domesticated and can maybe be looked at as being rehabilitated and put up for adoption. But there are some cats that no matter how friendly they are, they're never going to be happy indoors. So we will track that cat, and if it looks like we're not going to be able to adopt it out, we will return it to the colony that it was trapped from. But to whatever degree we can get and I think that's what's going to help train, if you will, the community to keep their domestic cats indoors, is that if they're going to be trapped and then put up for adoption, the good thing is they're going to be spayed, neutered, and they're going to be vaccinated against rabies. 2 things that would not happen without this program. And then if they come in and say, hey, that's my cat, well, here you go. It's now spayed, neutered, and vaccinated against rabies, and please keep your cat indoors. This could happen again. Of course, it's going to be ear-tipped, so if it should get trapped again, it won't be brought in to the shelter or to a spay-neuter clinic.
Yeah. I know in Newburyport, we used to have several cats that would come in, we microchipped everybody, so we'd scan, and then the cat would go back to the family, and then let the cat back out again. For whatever reason, the cat just would not stay in the house or whatever. The cat would come back in, and we had the vicious, inside out. And with a small community like Dickinson, Newburyport is a little bit smaller than that, but we did 10 towns, so that was like 125,000 population. But you get you get to know your community quite well, your cat community quite well. So over a period of time, I think you can be pretty confident that you're not like taking somebody's cat, in a small town situation.
And the beauty of this, implementing a program like this in a small town, is it's something of a domino effect. The city of Galveston Island, now has a very, very similar program. And in working with my partners, what's their name? Hang on. Lifeline of Galveston County, wonderful, wonderful organization, and they work with all of the communities in Galveston County. And they just told me that virtually every small town in Galveston County is now implementing some sort of TNR program, although they haven't codified it in their ordinance like we did, except for one. There's only one outlier left. So that's, I think, remarkable progress.
Oh, I think that's great.
In the Gulf Coast, which it's interesting, as you mentioned, I've worked in the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest, you name it, and pretty much with respect to overpopulation and the number of animals dying in our shelters. In the course of my career, when I started, there was 20 million animals dying in American shelters across the United States. Today, they estimate it's like 2.5 million. And most of those are probably unadoptable animals, except for the Gulf Coast. The Gulf Coast is still a very, very high kill region of the United States. So Dickinson has been a no-kill community way before I got here, and we want to continue that as well. But we are surrounded by a lot of shelters that still have to rely on euthanasia to control their shelter populations. So I think introducing TNR, because by and large, in most shelters across the United States, if you could solve two problems, the feral cat problem and the pit bull problem, those are the two animals that are dying in shelters across the U.S. And I know you get a lot of blowback for breed-specific legislation, but if we could focus on pit bulls the same way we want to focus on feral cats, the United States could empty its shelters in a year or two.
So I'm going to turn the conversation over to spay-neuter and accessibility to spay-neuter appointments, because I think we can both be in agreement that cats unspayed neutered cats either start out from the home someplace, or they're originated from within, and then they produce feral kittens, and that's what grows. So as I say, it starts with Adam and Eve. And then, we got Adam at one house and Eve at the other house, and then they both, get let out because Adam is spraying and Eve is in heat and nobody can stand to live with them. So they get thrown out of the house, or Eve's family moves. Anyway, that's how the whole story gets started. So, in my dream world, Adam and Eve get spayed and neutered when they're in the house, first and foremost, before they take that next step and move out and create next generations. What's happening in your region, because we have the shortage of veterinarians, shortage of spay-neuter resources, to be able to, cover both components, the own side of things as well as the sort of more reactive feral cat spay-neuter needs?
Well, we're fortunate in our community in that we have some amazing low-cost spay-neuter programs. The Gulf Coast, Lifeline, and Fix Your Pets, the three partners who are helping us with the TNR program, provide low-cost spay-neuter to the community. Some of them provide free spay-neuter services for feral cats. And in addition to that, there are other organizations, PBS and POP, and so there is a good, strong representation of low-cost and free spay-neuter services. And at the same time, Bayou Animal Services, we are looking into developing our medical program as well, so that we can be a part of that solution too. We're not there yet, but we're fortunate in our community that we have a lot of resources.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great to hear, because there are not many parts of the country you can say we've got pretty good. This is one of the bottlenecks right here, is the access to care for spay-neuter resources. So in your area, are all of the adoption programs in your area doing spay neuter before adoption also?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
So these are all huge. These are great. I mean, this is fantastic news for Texas. Do you believe in Texas, if everybody does what they should do, whether it's through a legislative way or whether it's just through really aggressive outreach, community cap programs? I mean, do you feel that some people say, oh, well, in the South, there's no chance, there's no hope, you can't have a community cap program, you're still going to always have cat overpopulation in the shelters. Do you feel that we can still get those numbers down even farther?
I do, or I wouldn't be here. That's sort of, have always taken on the challenging communities where, the three of the largest kill communities in the United States is New York, Los Angeles, and Maricopa County. And in each of those communities, we have made significant steps towards embracing the no-kill ethic. And so I'm really proud of the fact that I've been involved in an instrumental way in some of those communities. The challenge today, as I mentioned, is the South and primarily the Gulf Coast, which is why I feel like this is, this is where the challenge is, this is where the need is. And what's been remarkable and wonderful is having been met by so many great organizations like the three partners in this program and others who, really understand that this is sort of where the battle is right now in the United States for embracing this whole ethic of treating our animals humanely.
Right, and in my world, it's a dream of creating a humane community for our cats, in general. I mean, regardless, we have our statistics for our shelters, but that's a small subset of the whole overall population of the cats that we have, just in our own world, in our own environment. So,
Right.
Just trying to elevate the status of cats and the resources available to folks.
Right, right. As I explained to anybody who'll listen to me, there's a big difference between a no-kill facility, a no-kill program, and a no-kill community. And what we want to create are no-kill communities. And the only way you can do that is everybody's got to be connected and working together.
Yeah, agree with you 100% with regards to that, for sure. A loaded question, funding. Where does the funding come for all of this?
Well, as I mentioned, it's by and large run by volunteers. And the programs that we're working with are grant and donation based. So they get their funding from foundations and from grants and from donations.
So the partners that you have listed there, they're seeking grant funding and donations to support the spay neuter component.
Right. And they're providing the spay neuter and the trapping, the training, the trapping. Basically, when someone calls us with respect to a feral cat issue or problem, we refer them to one of our partners and they take it from there. So the cost to the City of Dickinson in addressing that feral cat issue is nothing.
Got you. Okay, great. The other thing is, I know that some communities, at least back in the day, earlier days when cat overpopulation was an issue in communities, a lot of cities and towns had, you were limited to 4 cats in the house or 10 cats in the house, or you'd have to get a kennel permit or something like that. Did Dickinson take it to that level, or not do something like that as a way, trying to distinguish between community cat stuff and like a hoarding situation, those kinds of things?
We this ordinance makes a distinction between a community cat and a pet. The ordinance does limit the number of pets to 4 dogs and or cats. So you can have 3 dogs, 1 cat, 2 dogs, 2 cats, but you can't have more than 4 dogs and cats combined. However, community cats do not enter into that equation. So if you're managing a feral cat colony, those cats do not count against pet quota.
Gotcha.
And that is something, you know, that's something I've struggled with because, like you mentioned, most communities have some sort of limitation on the number of pets people can own. And I've, you know, I'm not sure that I've always agreed with that. It never completely made sense. Certainly, I understand it in helping some people not go overboard. But there are some people who have acres and have the means and have the way that, you know, that they can care for more animals. So I think it should be some sort of a sliding scale, you know, that you can demonstrate that can care for 10 dogs or 10 cats. You should be allowed. But right now, I don't know how you would manage that. So I think most municipalities just have some sort of arbitrary number.
Yeah, and I mean, in most of the instances where I've chatted with municipal folks, they've said, well, like we don't enforce this, but we utilize it when we need to. So,
Exactly.
you know,
that's true.
And I think that's sort of where some of these rules get put into place is that, you know, you were just saying, as long as somebody's cat outside isn't causing a problem or isn't a nuisance, we're not going to spend a lot of our time chasing that cat down. But
Right.
if there is a cat that is causing a problem, you know, then it gives us a little bit more strength to be able to, you know, enforce some action or change.
Right. And sometimes that's the only ordinance you'll have. You'll be in those situations where you're on the cusp of neglect or cruelty. You know, it's you know, there's just not enough there to take it to court, but you know, you've got more animals than you can legally have, so you can do something. You can say, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to bring it down to 4 animals from the 50 you have right now, or whatever it is. And so it does give you something that you can do in those egregious situations.
There's a lot of, Dickinson has a lot of trust and faith in this legislation that it is, you know, going to stand the test of time. Oftentimes, the legislation's only as good as the folks that are sitting in power and enforcing it or partnering with the community for it. So, you know, based on that, what are your thoughts? You know, a lot of us, we hesitate. As you were saying, you know, some of the groups, we were just nervous about getting too much specific information, wanting, you know, to be anonymous, not trying to share all of our information, our deep and dark secrets that we might have and whatever. So what's your thought about this line between sort of the legislative side, the registration side, information on a public side versus this private dark TNR world that we have?
Right. Well, I can certainly understand the concerns of trappers and the folks involved. From my perspective, here in Dickinson, where I know the city council is engaged and supportive, and the city management is supportive and engaged, and the animal control is as well, that the only reason I would be interested in, and I think we got a good balance. We're able to manage this program without knowing all the details in that. But what we want to be able to do is make sure that when we get a call on a feral cat issue, is it part of a colony that is permitted or not? And there could be some areas where, because of the way we've structured it, we won't know. We will have to go to our permittees and say, is this one of your colonies? And they'll have to tell us, yes, it is. And then we can let them know, look, you've got a problem. Can you handle it? Or do we need to get involved? If they can handle it, great, we're done. If they can't, we'll help. But there is that area where we may not know, and we have to rely on our partners.
Yeah.
Which is the way they wanted it, and they brought me around to understanding that, okay, if that's the only way it's going to work, and you guys are willing to do it, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think several folks that are out there in our audience are in places like New York City or, more urban areas, larger communities than where you are right now. And so they're definitely sort of trying to understand the balance between the TNR group and individuals. And so, maybe try and put your shoes back into New York City or back into LA. What you've done here at Dickinson, how would that translate into a larger urban area, or would you think it would be a different model?
No, I think it's the same model. It's got to be a collaboration with the decision makers. In New York, when public health shuts it down, and that's why there's different approaches. Certainly the rat abatement approach. And I just saw a story up in New York recently where they are now poisoning the rats because it's become such a horrendous problem. And I would love to be in that community again, where we could look at TNR as a solution to this significant rat problem, because I've seen it work in very difficult areas like the Flower District, as I mentioned, in California, in Los Angeles. The rats were just running everywhere, and people wouldn't get out of their cars. I mean, it was bad. And people were showing me articles that went back 50 years. It had always been that way, and it's not that way now. So it does make a difference in those communities. In the city of Los Angeles, I think that we did the best that we could. We took on the Audubon Society, the city did, and the community did, and it's been a while since I've been involved there, but it's my understanding that they've come to some sort of resolution, and TNR is again supported by the city. So I think sometimes it's going to be tough. Sometimes you're going to have resistance, and I think it helps having people in decision-making positions who understand the value of TNR and can see the big picture and can see how it's part of an ecosystem in both an urban and a rural community. That our feral cats in our rural communities are taking the place of the bobcat or the fox, or in keeping down the rodents and the barn vermin and that sort of thing, as well as in the city. And I'm very sympathetic to the concerns with respect to songbirds. But again, if the only way to reduce the cat population and the threat to songbirds is TNR, then for God's sakes, why would you want to not do that?
All right, so, and I've had that conversation with the folks with the piping plovers on the East Coast.
Right.
I've had the conversation with them a lot, and just saying, if you isolate the TNR groups and you pull them out of a community, you're going to have 2 or 3 times as many cats within a year or two's time if you're in a very transient area, touristy area where people are coming and going. I was like, I can tell you precisely how many more cats you're going to be dealing with in that area. If you alienate the TNR groups and they move out, you're just going to be, asking for trouble.
If they move out and animal control moves in with the catch and kill program, the population will explode.
Right, exactly. And I mean, we'd already gone through that historically. And I had a phone call one year from our mayor in Newburyport saying, I heard you have a barn relocation program, and I hope you're not trapping the cats on the waterfront to move them into barns because we need them there for the rats.
Right.
The mayor of
Smart
the
man.
city
Smart
calling
man.
me up and worrying, woman, it was woman. And she was just very worried that we were taking the cats away from her waterfront, which was very interesting.
Right. A lot of people don't know that Winston Churchill actually introduced cats. I'm not sure that they were neutered cats or spayed cats, but to the Royal Navy. One of the reasons there were cats on the ships of the Royal Navy was rat abatement.
Yeah.
And Winston Churchill was a big supporter of that.
Yeah, we had a feeding station at the first Coast Guard station in the United States. Actually, 4 feeding stations, but over time it went from 35 cats and went down and down and down. So we had started with 300 and now we have 0 there. So there's no more cats there anymore. So unfortunately, the rats are facing a different kind of demise because there's no cats there on the waterfront anymore. So, but anyway, the one last takeaway that I would like people to take, because I think this is really important. We talked about sort of the contagious nature of the program in Dickinson and how it's impacting the rest of Galveston County. So if one community is doing it, and we're all very familiar with targeted TNR, you know, you find a colony, you really get in there, you get, you know, you get to 90, ideally 100% TNR, you're going to make a greater impact. And I think the same is true with a community cat program. You have a strong community cat program. This is focused, and then it becomes contagious and it builds from there. So, you know, people are asking, oh my gosh, let's do all New York State, or let's do the state of California. And it's like, no, let's do, you know, 2 or 3 different communities and then let it grow from there, have these like hubs and then grow out from there. And I think that's the best approach.
Right. As decision makers begin to realize, oh, this is a solution to my problem, they're more open to exploring it in their communities.
Excellent. One quick question, Ed. There are a lot of people out there that are interested in asking you some follow-up questions. I did put the link to your website in the chat. I assume there's a contact link in there if they have questions.
Yeah, and the very last slide of my presentation is my work email address, so they can contact me there as well. Okay,
fantastic. And those are in the handouts, everybody. So you would see that in the handouts. So great conversation. I am all for thinking about different ways of doing things, trying to understand the different approaches. Every community has a different challenge. I've had animal control reach out to me for help in communities. I've had Board of Health reach out to me for help in their communities. You know, I've had fire departments reach out to me looking for help in the communities because they're like, we're sick and tired of going to these houses and finding all these cats in these houses and everything.
Right.
So you never know who's going to ask for help. It's just, you know, respond and act, and each community is different, and then we try and create a package that's going to work for them, really.
Those are all municipal departments. So if you calculate the cost savings to all of these departments across the board, it's significant. It's very, very significant. So it's you know, it would just be wise for municipal decision makers to look at this methodology and embrace it. They've got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. Excellent. Ed, thank you again. I can't wait to interview you for the podcast too. We've got a podcast interview coming up later this month and I can't wait to do that.
Fabulous.
It's going to be fun. Yep.